Hello and welcome back to my channel once again. So in this video we are going to be solving the 2018 Elective ICT Practical question number 1, and this is an HTML question. So the whole idea of this question is creating a form. We are basically going to be creating a form in this question. It's going to be interesting, so let's get right into it. Alright, so welcome back once again, and right before us is the question we are going to be solving. Let's quickly read through, then we get started with a solution. 1a. With the help of an appropriate text editor, create the HTML code to produce the page below. So this is basically a form with a submit button. 1b. Set the title of the page to your full name and index number. The program code must be properly indented. So an example has been given, and you can see it yourself. Then in 1c, save the file as form.html in the folder created. So that's the question. Now I made a tutorial previously on HTML, and the folder is still on my desktop screen, so I'm going to be using the same folder and I'm going to save it in here. This time I'm going to be using Notepad++ as the appropriate text editor. So I'm going to launch that up next. So it's right over here. Okay, good. And yes. So the question here and then my Notepad++ on here. So let's get started with it. Now the first thing when starting out with your HTML document, as I've said in my previous tutorial, is the doc type declaration. So I'm going to do that real quick. So that is it. And then the next thing is the HTML root element. Okay. First let's save this file. So in order to save it, you go to File and select Save As, or use the shortcut of Ctrl+Alt+S. So you're going to click that. Then you're going to locate the location of the folder you created on your desktop. So you go to your desktop and then you locate the folder. So you double click. And now you give the folder a name. So according to the question, we have to save it as what? Form.html. So I'm going to copy and paste that there. And then for the save as type, we need to change it from what? A normal txt file to what? An HTML file. So you click that, and you're going to see this whole lot of options. You want to take your time and scroll down until you see hypertext markup language file. So you click that hypertext markup language file and click on save. So now you can see that we've saved it. Let's go to our desktop, open the folder, and now you can see we have what? Form.html. Double click it. So right now we see nothing. We see that the file name is form.html. Okay, let me close this and open that. So as I've said in my previous tutorial, after I've created the HTML root element, the next thing is the head section followed by the body section. So the head section is basically what? The head element. So before you do that, you have to indent your code. That is even what the question was saying. The program code must be properly indented. So you see that with the example we have here, we have a P element. So the P element represents a paragraph. And inside it, we have a U element. The U element represents underline. So basically, what is happening here is that the text item will be underlined because it has been placed inside a U element. But you can also notice that there is some space between the U element and the P element. That is the indentation the question is telling us to do. So in our own program, after the root element or inside the root element, you're going to press the spacebar key, the tab key, sorry. You press the tab key once, and then to move your cursor 4 spaces to the right, that is indentation. Then you type in the head element. So that's the opening tag and then the closing tag. Inside the head element is where you're going to put in information about your page. An example is the title. And according to the question in 1b, set the title of the page to your full name and index number. So that is what we are going to do next. So inside the head element, you create the title element. And then you set it to your full name and index number. So an example is John Winner. And then your index number like that. Now, you need to see the changes. So let's go to our browser and then refresh. So you can see that we refresh, but nothing has changed. That is because even though we made a few changes to our HTML document, we didn't save the file. So to save it, you go to Files and click on Save, or use the shortcut of Ctrl+S to save it. Now when you go back to your browser and you reload, you see that it changes from form.html to what? Your full name and index number. So that is how you set the title of your web page or your HTML document. Okay, so yes, now the next thing is to create the body section, because in order to create this form, you need to create a body section. You know, the body section is the visible part of your HTML document. So right under the head, you're going to create the body element like that, the open and then the closing tag. And inside the body is where you're going to start creating your form. So now, before you even create the form, you need to understand what you are seeing in the question. We see name, we see an input box, we see comment, another input box, then we see the submit. Now, how do we represent this in HTML code? Name can be represented as a label. The input box, there is a way to do it, which I'll show you. Comment too is a label, and submit is a button. So I'll show you how to do that. Now, inside the body element, in order to create a form, usually you'd use what we call the form element like this. And then inside it, you create the stuff. So for example, use the form element. Then the first thing we see is name. So in order to represent name in HTML, we are going to use the label element, which looks something like this. So an open and a closing tag for label. And then in between it, you're going to type in what? Name. Like that. Then for the input box, here's how you do it. So you type in input and a greater than sign. Now input box doesn't have a closing tag. It's one of those few tags in HTML that do not have a closing tag. They are a self-sustaining tag on their own. So you type it like this, input. Then you need to add a few attributes. So the main attribute you need to add is the type attribute. So you press the space, then you type in type, equal to sign, double quotation mark. And in between the double quotation mark, you specify the data type you're expecting. Now, when you look at the question, it says name and then an input box. It means that in this input box, we are expecting a name. And a name is text or string. So the type we want to put here is what? Text. Because we are expecting a name for this input box, right? Now, there are other attributes you could include. So, but before we do that, let's save the changes, go to our browser, and then refresh. And now let me zoom in a bit. You can see now we have what? Name and then an input box. Nicely done. Let's go back to Notepad++. Now, if you want to, for example, increase the size of your input box, you can use the size attribute. So you press space, then you type in size equal to, then you specify the value. So something like 25. Save it, go to your browser and refresh. And you notice that the size has increased. It has increased a bit. So you could increase it to however much you want to do that. Anyway, we need to do the same thing for comments in the input box. So since it's the same, we can just copy this, the label in the input box, then we paste it right under it. So we just have to change it from what? Name to comment. And then the type is the same because comments, you're also expecting a text. So we just leave it as it is, save it, go to our browser and refresh. So we see name, we see comment, but comment is supposed to come under. And I'll show you how to do that in a bit. So let's leave that for now. And now let's create a submit. So the submit is a button, and there's indeed a button element, but you can also use the input element for that. So let me show you how to do that. You type in the input, and then you specify the attribute. So the attribute what is type equal to. So now this time, instead of text, we are going to use submit, and then a greater than sign. This is enough. Hit on Ctrl+S to save. Go to your browser, refresh. And now you see we have a submit button. So you see now we have a submit button. So that is how you do it. So basically we are done with the creation of the form. The only problem we have is the structure of it. So you can see what we have in the question right now. But when you look on what we have done so far, it is not structured. So there are actually many ways to go about fixing this. But the easiest way according to HTML is to use a table instead. So what we are going to do is we are going to remove the form element. Then we are going to leave what we've created so far. Let's calm down a bit. And then we are going to create a table and put these things that we've created inside a table to structure it. So I've already introduced table in my previous tutorial, and I'll be quick on it right now. So we're just going to create a table element. And then inside the table element, Of course, the table consists of rows and columns. And so we can say that from the question, we have 3 rows and 3 columns. 1 row for the name and then its input box, another row for comment and its input box, and a final row to contain the submit button. For the columns, name and comment can be considered to be one column. The 2 input boxes can be considered to be another column, and then submit can be considered to be its own column. So basically 3 columns, 3 rows, and that's what you're going to do here. You're going to create 3 rows in this table. So to create a row, use the tr element, and then inside the tr element, you create table data. So for the first row, as I said, we have what name and then the input box. We are going to create a table data. And then in the first table data, we are going to put in the label name. So you're going to copy, cut it, and paste it in between. Then we are going to do the same thing for the input. So we come down, we create another table data. This time I'll create like this. Then I'll copy and paste the inputs inside it like that. So the first table data contains our label name, and then the second table data contains our input box for name. Now press Ctrl plus S to save. Let's head on to our browser and now let's see what it looks like. So right now we see name and its input box. We don't see much of a change, but you'll notice it soon. Now let's create the second row. So let's copy this and then paste it. Because the only thing we change here is the name. So we change it to what? Comment. And as for the input box, remember it is the same thing. The type is the same, the size is okay the way it is. So we can just take this out. Now let's press Ctrl plus S to save. Let's go onto our browser and have a look. So now are you noticing the difference now? You can see that now that we are using a table to structure it, it's now looking nicely. Initially, the way the input box was looking, it wasn't looking nicely like this. So now let's continue. So we've created 2 rows. The first row for name and its input box, the second row for comments and its input box. Now the final row for submit. So you're going to create another row. And then inside it, we are going to put in the submit input button. Let me indent that properly. Let me also clear this space. Nice. It seems I have to reduce the size a bit. Okay, so this is the whole code right now. It may look a bit messy. So, but basically, this is, let me even create spaces so that we can see. So this is the first row. This is the second row. And this is the third row. Press Ctrl plus S to save. Go to our browser. And we see this so far. Okay. So submit is supposed to be under, but it's appearing on top. So we need to fix that. Let me see what the problem is. Okay, yes. So in order to fix that, we need to add, okay, I get it now. We place the input inside the table row, but we didn't put it in a table data. That's the problem. So we have to create a table data first. TD. And then we put the input inside it. So let me put this one under it. And then I'll indent it. And then let's save it and see if it fixes the issue. Nice. So now submit is where it is. Not quite exactly, because in the question submit should be somewhere to the right, but it's still at the left. So how do we go about doing that? In order to explain this clearly, let me add an attribute to the table opening tag element. That will be a border. So I'm going to add a border with a radius of 1 and press Ctrl plus S to save. Now let's go to our browser and have a look. Okay. So do you see what is going on in our browser? We have added a border to our table. And right now we only see 2 columns, but we want 3 columns. So we can see 3 rows. The first row on top, second row, and third row. That is what we want. But we also want 3 columns because name and comments should be 1 column. So what the cell under here should be empty. The second column is the 2 input boxes. And then the cell under these 2 input boxes should also be empty. But the third column should have submit somewhere here. So basically there will be 2 input boxes above submit that will be empty. So how do we go about doing that? You come back to your code, and inside the third row, you're going to create 2 different input data elements, but you're going to leave them empty. So we come to the top here. Then we create a table data, the opening and then the closing tag, but we leave it empty like that. We do the same thing a second time, and then press Ctrl plus S to save. Let's go back, refresh. Now do you see what is happening? Now, because we've created two empty table datas, it has forced submit to come to the right. So we've created an empty table data, another empty table data, and submit was forced to come to the right. So now we have three different columns and three different rows. This is how it should look like. This is how it should work. Now that we fix the issue, we can remove the border. So now let's remove that attribute and press Ctrl plus S to save. Go back to the question and refresh. Now you can see how nicely it looks. So initially, even though we were able to create the form, the structure wasn't quite what we wanted, but we are able to use a table to structure it the way we want. Now, another thing is the alignment of name. So you can see that in the question, name has been aligned to the center. It's in between, but if you want to change that, it's also simple. You have to use an attribute. So you're going to locate the attribute name, and then you're going to add an attribute to the table data in which you find the label name in. So in the table data, you're going to use an attribute called align, equal to sign, and then you're going to say center. So basically, we are saying that align the table data to the center. Press Ctrl plus S to save. Go to your browser and have a look. So you can see it has aligned to the center now. So let's look at the question once again. And I can see that we are done with everything. We've typed in the HTML code to produce the page we have here. We have also set the title. We also made sure to properly indent our code, and we saved our file as form.html in the folder created. So yes, this is the complete solution to this question. That's from the beginning all the way to the bottom. I hope that my explanation or the way I went about it was easily understood. If that was the case, then don't forget to support this channel by giving this video a thumbs up, hit on the subscribe button and the bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. See you guys in the next video, and bye for now.